My name is Frank Ally. I'm a licensed California attorney dealing primarily in family law matters. The topic of this episode is parenting times for infants and toddlers. Now let's get started. Now before we delve deeper into this matter, a little disclaimer. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a psychologist. I have taken one psychology class that was in my undergraduate studies, and as you can tell, that was quite a while ago. So I don't know psychology. All I know is what my experience has taught me. One article I've read was by a woman named Linda Nielsen. It was a summary of 40 studies on the outcomes for children, which involved actual empirical data and analysis of parenting time plans with children and how it affected their later development. This article will put things in context for you. For that reason, I have in the description below linked that particular article. I think you should read that in the context, believe her and those studies more than what I'm going to tell you based on my experience. This is a very important subject because the development of an infant and toddler is different than that of an older child. And it's important that you as a mother and you as a father recognize that this isn't about you. This is about what's best for your child. And the king said, "Bring me a sword." And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, "Divide the living child in two and give half to this one and half to the other." Then spake the woman whose living child was unto the king, and for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, "O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it." But the other said, "Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it." Then the king answered and said, "Give her the living child, and no wise slay it, for she is the mother thereof." 1 Kings chapter 23-27. King Solomon understood what we're trying to convey here, and that is, your child is not a thing to divide into two parts. Your child is a thing to be nurtured and cared for. And it's up to you as the parents to do what's best, not for you, but for the child. The court has a number of factors in determining how parenting time is decided between two parents. And I'm going to reference in this video a number of code sections. You can go to the description below. I've linked these particular code sections for you to read, but let's start off with the big ones. The broad general standard is the best interest of the child. In determining the standard, the court must use the health, safety, and welfare of the child as a primary consideration. This isn't about, I'm the dad, I deserve my child, or this is the mom, I deserve this child. This is about what the best interest of the child is. And that's the starting point. In making an initial custody determination, when you first go to court, and remember, I don't want you to go to court. What I want you to do is work with the other parent to put the child's interests first. Because remember, if you don't do what's best for the child, and you guys can't agree, you're gonna end up in front of a judge. The judge doesn't know your child, the judge doesn't love your child. The judge is gonna spend maybe 5 minutes on your case, and then make a determination on your child of what's gonna happen to your child, which will affect that child for the rest of that child's life. There are consequences to letting judges make decisions. But judges don't make it all by themselves. They'll send you off to a therapist or an evaluator who might spend an hour with you. And again, this therapist, as competent and as caring as they may be, doesn't love your child, doesn't know your child, and doesn't understand the nuances of the relationships between you, the other parent, and the child. But in that hour, they're going to make recommendations that are going to affect you, the other parent, and that child for the rest of that child's life. I beseech you, please, do not cut your child in half. Put your child's interest ahead of yours and do what's best for the child. I'm going to reference a couple of things here, and these are also linked in the description below. There is a book you can find on the internet, linked below. It's called Planning for Parenting Time. This is a commission that was commissioned by the Arizona Supreme Court a number of years ago, and this talks about various parenting time plans for kids based on their developmental stage of where they are in their lives. That is an excellent resource. I use it all the time. There's another woman that you can find, and I said this in a prior video, the internet is a great repository of information. Some of it's good, but there's a lot of garbage out there. But something I give to my clients is an article I found by a Dr. Isabella Fox, who's a professor in Southern California, and she wrote an article called "A Letter to the Court, Overnights and Other Custody Visitation Arrangements with Divorced or Separated Parents of Infants and Toddlers." You can print out a PDF in the description below, or you can go to the link below and actually read this yourself. This is an excellent resource, and I want you to take a look at this, because when you're dealing with a child who's between the ages of 0 and 3, I think there's some special considerations that both you and the other parent need to think about. Infants and toddlers have different emotional and psychological requirements that are different from older children. To allow overnights away from a primary attachment figure in an unfamiliar setting is stressful and traumatic, and has those long-term and even lifetime negative consequences to your children. Nonverbal infants away from familiar homes or apartments feel abandoned with deep feelings of impotence, anger, and sadness. Crying may eventually subside, but the residue of rage and hopelessness can haunt that child and influence in relations with both the mother and father for years to come. We're not talking about a 7-year-old, we're not talking about an 8-year-old, we're not talking about a 30-year-old, which you guys may be, because you have different ideas, emotional development. You're in a different spot than that child who's 2 years old. An overnight visitation away from the primary caregiver and familiar routines is not in the best interest of the children until approximately age 3, when there's usually enough language ability for that child to understand where he or she is going, who will take care of him, what is happening, and when he will be returned to familiar caregivers. That's why the Arizona guidebook, I believe, and the courts tend to adopt this model of the needs of an infant and toddler are different than the needs of an older children. For example, in the Parenting Time Handbook, there are 3 different plans showing early age development, and that is, one would be the non-primary caregiver would have 3 periods of time during the week. They could either be 5 hours one day, 3 hours another day, 3 hours another day. You could do 6 hours one day, 4 hours another day, or you do 3 hours, and 8 hours. So what you're looking at here on this chart that I'm showing you on the video is 3 different plans for an infant and toddler. And the key here is frequent and continuing contact. Now, eventually, as that kid gets older, 2 years old, 2.5, getting closer to 3, and you want to start introducing overnights, you could go to Plan 4 in the Model Parenting Time Handbook, which says, maybe we do an overnight once a week. So here under Plan 4, what I've shown is a plan that I've designed where Thursday night, the non-custodial parent has 4 hours. Then on Saturday night, they get an overnight from maybe 4 o'clock to the next morning at like 10 a.m. And then on Tuesday, there's another 3-hour block. So what we're doing is we're continuing a frequent series of frequent and continuing contact between the child and the non-custodial parent. As that child gets older, we can add a second overnight. That would be Plan 5. So I think you should take a look at the Parenting Time Handbook. That's a good way to do. As Isabel Fox says, extended time away, especially at night, creates stress for the children. Now, who is the custodial parent? I'm not going to answer that question. You guys both know. This isn't about child support. This isn't about asserting your rights or being equal parent. This isn't about, I need to be bonded. This is about the need of a child to identify a primary caregiver at the very earlier stages. And if you do this, it's going to make the relationship in later years between both the mother and father better. Primary attachments are very critical and profoundly important. This is where and how all of us learn to trust, to give and receive love, and develop a sense of optimism and hope. Such attachments and the bonds that are created can be easily damaged in the first years of life and can have long-term consequences. Put your children first. Think about this and use appropriate parenting time plans in those early years, because it'll help both of you and especially help the children in the later years. I'm Frank Ally, and if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, share us, or if you want, you can buy my production assistant, Shauna here, a cup of coffee by linking below. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.